Welcome to Xeno Podcast, where we talk about how we shape stories and how they shape us. Today we've got Dr. Daniel Henderson here from the musical department.
Hi there.
Hi.
Dr. Henderson is a professor of music at BYU Hawaii, and he also teaches a composition and songwriting class.
That's right.
So could you tell us a little bit about your teaching experience and how you ended up at BYU Hawaii?
This is the end of my second year here. Extremely happy here. What an amazing place. My family's very happy here. It's a big change for us. We moved from Boston, Massachusetts. That's where all four of our kids were born. So like a fundamental lifestyle change for the kids from big city downtown Boston kids riding the subway and to coming to La IE, where kids just kind of rule the streets on their scooters and skateboards. And you just kind of shout when it's dinner time, and they'll come home because they hear you somewhere. But for me, it's a new challenge, and I'm very happy with this new challenge. My first teaching job was at a conservatory, so that's like the sort of elite performance level musicians who don't necessarily have strong academic skills, but are obsessed with performance. After that, it was off to Harvard after I finished my doctorate to go teach mostly non-music majors, but I mean brilliant students, people who think really well and who learn really fast, but non-music majors. So that presented a new challenge, and now it's sort of the multicultural challenge for me, where students come not only from different cultural backgrounds and different language backgrounds, but also different, wildly different musical backgrounds. Some people might be very accomplished musicians in one tradition and then come into the classroom or a band and feel completely out of place or overwhelmed. And vice versa. We might hear some of our students and just marvel at what they can do, and their talents and their really unique instruments. But we have to learn to speak the same language and work together, and it's been really rewarding for me so far.
Awesome.
I feel like it would be really interesting moving from a city to a place like here, and not just a small town, but also like such a culturally diverse place where there's lots of like reggae and like lots of like island style music around. And then I don't know how the city was, but like, did you see like general trends that were like city music or just like versus like the small town music?
That's a good question. I came from Boston, and Boston is an extremely musical city, mostly because two of the most famous music schools in the world are there, with New England Conservatory and Berklee College of Music. And so every year you have thousands of graduates coming out of those elite music programs, and then many of them just staying there hoping to get gigs and perform. So there's live music all over the place and jam sessions. It's a fairly sort of like avant-garde music scene sometimes too, in that people really push the stylistic boundaries and really challenge one another to do things that haven't ever been done before. So that was sort of the like musical vibe that I was a part of there. And I knew that was just not going to be so much a part of my life here. There are very few jazz musicians in La IE.
Yeah.
And there's no daily, nightly jam session that'll go till 3 a.m. But I have these amazing students. It's an incredible place to be. So just new challenges and trying to be the very best fit for this community and what they need.
Yeah. And you were also telling us you love birds and bird watching. So we're going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I'm kind of an obsessive bird watcher. I got into this probably 4 or 5 years ago. I took in my undergrad days, you could actually take a bird watching class and have it count for your GEs. This was at BYU Provo. Cool. So I took that and I got casually into bird watching. I primarily took it because it seemed a lot easier than the chemistry and physics electives, and bird watching counted for science.
Was it more was it easier?
For me, it was you had to go out for 60 hours and watch birds, and make observations.
Wow.
So rather than sitting there
in
the lab or something, that was my nature is your lab.
Right.
But about maybe 4 years ago, I something just kind of switched on in me, and I began to just love bird watching. Boston has a long winter, and that's kind of frustrating. You can bird watch in the winter because migrating birds come through, but spring through fall, as many mornings as I could, I'd be up at about 4 a.m.
Wow.
And be off into the woods, somewhere deep into the woods or some swamp. And, the sun will rise somewhere around 4:30, 4:45, and I'm already out in the middle of the woods.
Wow.
And that's when the
Jeez,
birds
cold.
and nature is most active. And it's just you and the deer and the raccoons and all the birds waking up. And so the sound is incredible. Just sit there and listen. Maybe people don't realize that, but the more you get into bird watching, the less it's about watching, and the more it's about listening. And I like to just stand in the middle of the woods. I could stay in the same spot for an hour, just me, occasional deer passing by, and just listen to the birds as they're coming in and out of my area. And once you're able to identify them all by song or their little calls to each other, then it's amazing. And I have a notebook out and I keep track of every single bird that I see, and then go write it in my online logs and keep track of exactly how many times I've seen each species and where I saw them and what date and what they were doing.
That's super
How do you
cool.
keep track of calls? Like can you write it out in like English syllables enough? Like is it like a close equivalent?
Yeah, you can. If you buy a bird identification guide, they'll have some kind of a written version of their call,
Like
along
the
with a description.
kind of a
Yeah,
thing.
it'll say like tsit, 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 a high pitched tsit, 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 or something like that, with a
That's
descending ooh at the end, But there's no substitute for just listening to it live. Like, I'll read the book descriptions and you can listen to recordings online, and I do that obsessively too, especially during the winter months, so that I can be ready for the spring. Or I know that this bird is going to migrate through here next week. I got to be ready. I got to know all their sounds.
That's super cool.
And so then you hear the sounds. You can see the species and watch them for a while and say, that's the call. And it makes it exciting because you can go deep in the woods and know that there are some really rare birds here, and you just stand there for an hour and listen. And after 45 minutes, there it was, way up there in the tree. So you go trekking over there with your binoculars, look up in the tree until you can finally find it. There it is, this beautiful rare bird, that only a couple people will see per year in this state,
Wow.
That's part of what appeals to me. It's like a whole brain and whole soul exercise. Some people say, is it just relaxing? It must just be so relaxing. It's kind of the opposite. It's really hyper stimulating.
Exhilarating.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then so there's a whole group of different birds here in Lafayette, right? Than Boston. I mean,
Oh yeah, completely
where do you
different.
go listen to birds here? Just at the beach? Is there anything?
Yeah, there's nothing like it here. I mean, most of the birds on this island you can find in the neighborhood. You can get up high in the mountains, down by Honolulu or over on the west side, and you can see some of the endemic species, which we just don't have on this whole part of the island. But for the most part, all the birds are here in the neighborhood, so there's no 4 a.m. trekking out into the woods.
Yeah.
Waimea Valley and the James Campbell Wildlife Refuge each have some little more unusual species, but bird watching is really easy here, and it's kind of frustrating. I want it to be harder.
I want a challenge.
Well, yeah, I mean, every day pretty much I wake up to chickens. Just
Yeah,
And you get the
just
chickens,
the
yeah.
chickens
Chicken watching.
alone.
I know they're called very well.
Yes, the rooster call.
So does all of this bird watching, does it have an effect on your music, or is this something completely separate that you like to do?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, there's a composer named Maria Schneider who's a very famous, well-respected jazz composer right now. And she's also an obsessive bird watcher, and we've been bird watching together, which is amazing. But she actually puts bird calls directly into her music sometimes.
Really?
A piece will be directly inspired by a bird song, or even have bird sounds.
Wow.
Recordings even, or musicians imitating those bird calls. I haven't really done that, but one thing that I know affects my artistic output and my creativity is the degree to which I'm feeling wonder and awe about the world. And if I don't feel wonder and awe, I don't feel like creating.
Yeah.
I think because part of the way I conceive my role as a creative artist is trying to help people see and enjoy the beauty and wonder that's all around in the world, in people, in animals, in nature, all over. And so doing something like bird watching really keeps my soul open and keeps me excited. And then when I sit down to create, I'm alive.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're going to talk about an original song that you wrote, and it's about Nigel the bird, right?
Yeah.
Nigel? Is that right?
His name is Nigel.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so there's this brand new song cycle that I've been writing right now.
Mm-hmm.
A song cycle is a group of songs all composed by the same person that are centered around a single theme of some kind.
Yeah. And
when I was teaching songwriting here at BYU Hawaii last year, we studied one Beatles piece called "She's Leaving Home" from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, and John Lennon and Paul McCartney later explained that they wrote this piece in response to a news article. This young woman's face was on the cover of the newspaper in London because she had run away from home and she'd been missing for weeks.
Oh, wow.
And the parents kind of wanted her back and just get her face out there and see what happens. And there were some really quirky elements of the story, and the parents, the whole family relationship seemed kind of strange. And so Lennon and McCartney said, "What's the story there? What if we told this through music?"
Yeah.
And so they created like a dialogue that happened in the home, and they created reasons for why she left home and where she went. And it's one of their most moving, beautiful songs. I think any Beatles fan would agree with that.
Yeah.
All springing from this newspaper article. And so when I was teaching that song, I decided to do the same thing for my class, just to show how it would happen today.
Yeah.
And it happened to be the day that this news article came out about the two women who got lost at sea. And maybe you've read it or some of the listeners have read it, but these two women reported that they left from Honolulu with the aim to go to Tahiti.
Oh,
just
wow.
the two of them on their big boat.
Yeah.
And long story short, 5 months later, they were spotted and rescued by a fishing boat off the coast of Japan,
Wow.
where they said that everything on the journey that could go wrong basically had gone wrong.
Except
And they were
made
just,
it.
except they were alive.
They were alive.
And 4,000 or 5,000 miles off course from where they wanted to be. So they'd just been drifting.
Wow.
And there was this line in there where the sister of one of the women who was rescued says, "And so she's just been drifting with the currents." And I thought she should have said "drifting with the currents of the sea" because it sounded more musical.
Yeah.
So I took that and I wrote a piece of a song and brought it into my class. And that song is now complete. But I didn't want to stop there. I said, okay, let's keep this thing rolling. And just last week we had a concert on campus for the faculty, a group called Cross Current, and we premiered 4 of my pieces that are part of this song cycle.
Awesome.
And as you say, one of them's about a bird, which I guess shouldn't surprise anybody that knows me. But this is the story of a bird that was named Nigel. And I know you have in front of you the story from the New York Times and the Washington Post and National Geographic. They all wrote about it. But off the coast of New Zealand, conservationists had built a sanctuary island for seabirds, where no seabirds had been for 40 years. But it had now become a safe sanctuary. No predators, no disease. Birds, you need to come and nest here because where you're nesting is unsafe.
Yeah.
In order to attract the birds, they had to build decoy birds out of concrete and paint them to look like real birds. The bird was called a gannet. That's the species. It's an elegant, large, white bird with a golden neck and a long bill. And they live primarily out at sea and on islands way out in the sea. So for several years they tried to attract birds and none came. But finally the day came when one bird landed on the island, and they looked out there and they saw this one bird checking out the other birds. And they were sad it was only one because obviously he won't stay, but hopefully that's the beginning of new things. But anyways, he stayed.
Yeah.
And he went and got to know these concrete birds, checked them all out. And one of these birds, painted like a female, he fell in love.
Oh,
and
Nigel.
And he started making his little cooing calls and rubbing his neck up against her and singing to her, bringing her food. He would go catch some food from the water and bring her food and sleep next to her every night. And he did that every day and every night for 4 years until he finally died all alone.
Oh my gosh.
So no other birds came?
No other birds came. Interestingly, right at the end of Nigel's life, new
Mhm.
birds started to come.
Wow.
And it seems that this island may be a success, but
Maybe.
but Nigel never had other interactions with birds. It was always
Aw.
just him and his concrete bird.
Wow.
And it was so moving to me. Like, you might just say, oh, what a stupid bird. You know, couldn't he figure out this bird is concrete? You know, but there's something so human about it, about human relationships. You know, I bet everybody listening can think of a relationship that's maybe like that, you know,
Yeah.
loving you and not getting anything back, from Nigel's perspective. So I thought, I got to write a song. But the more I got into writing lyrics and getting ideas, I decided I don't want to write a song from Nigel's perspective. I want to write a song from the perspective of the concrete bird,
Mhm.
because I don't feel like Nigel. And maybe it's a more interesting story to sing it from the concrete bird's perspective. What does the concrete bird feel, if it can feel? It feels anxious and worried because this visiting bird, this real bird, thinks it's something that it's not. And it chose the concrete bird based on a misconception that bird was just perfect for what he needed. And so how many of us feel like that in relationships, where over time our flaws start to show, and we're worried that the person who chose us will say, okay, I'm out, bailing out because you're not who I thought you were. I now see there are imperfections here that I didn't sign up for. And that feels more vulnerable and more human to me. So I want to play for you the song.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we love
absolutely.
that. That's awesome.
So I'll play for you the piano part and sing along with it.
Awesome.
This is the song about Nigel. Nigel the lonely bird. And I thought, oh, what if that is us? What if that is you and me? What if I end up never becoming the man I'm trying to be? The day you told me yes, you said I had a heart of gold. But now the concrete round the edges is showing as I grow old. Now I know, in marriage over time your flaws all show. You can't come off as perfect anymore. So here I stand in my total imperfection, hoping you'll have room inside your heart to love the way you used to love before. So please be patient, please be kind. I'm broken, but you have my heart, my soul and mind. I know that love can heal, love can bind. This old concrete bird is pleading, don't leave me behind, don't leave me behind.
It was good.
Yeah, thank you.
Who would have thought, like, a super romantic song about a bird, a concrete bird?
Yeah, it's like this kind of R&B sultry love song.
Yeah.
You know, but he's also extremely vulnerable and anxious. So I kind of applied it to marriage. You know, he says, now I know in marriage over time your flaws all show. You can't come off as perfect anymore. So here I stand in my total imperfection, hoping you have room inside your heart to love me like you used to love before.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of the message, and then pleading for patience and please don't leave me behind.
So sweet about a lonely bird. Like, I don't know, it's so creative. And like, I love how you take these stories that don't really, like, they're passing by, you know, you kind of don't think about them, and you create something completely new. So that's awesome.
Yeah, you know, that's part of, I think, why I do it is because when you say like songs from the news, I'm guessing that most people assume that I'm going to be singing about whatever political scandal is in the news today. because if you pull up a
Yeah.
news website or a news channel, that's what it's going to be about. But there are all these incredible things happening in the world right now. Discoveries, stories, amazing people that might make a headline for a second and then they're gone while we focus
Yeah.
on the latest scandal.
Yeah.
But these are things that deserve to stay in front of us. And I suppose this songwriting is my way of doing it, just saying this is a real story. This is a story that has real importance and applicability for our human relationships.
Yeah.
So let's kind of remember it one more time.
That's awesome.
There's one more song. Can I play for you that,
Yeah,
that goes
absolutely.
with this?
Yeah.
So as I was writing this, I kind of felt like I took on the character of this bird, you know, and I myself felt really anxious and vulnerable and worried, and I suppose that's probably something I worry about in life sometimes. Like I want to be perfect.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
I want to be the perfect professor. I want to be the perfect husband. I want to be the perfect dad. I want to be the perfect neighbor. And I just can't do any of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Nobody's
and
perfect,
so
but-
that's a lot of anxiety. So then I thought, what if she, this other bird, this real bird, sang a song to reassure me about how she feels? Wouldn't that be nice? So that song just doesn't leave there. It's not left there hanging. So then I wrote this song in response to it, and it's called "My Silent Bird." So it's sung from the perspective of this other female bird that comes and is singing to reassure me. So this is how it goes. I love you, my silent bird, and surely I always will. But when my breath fails me and I sleep, remember this is true. My heart will always be here with you.
Applause again.
Yeah.
So
was
there's my
Such a
silent
small
bird.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So
Was
now
that
I
from-
can feel better.
Yes.
Well, was that from the perspective of the other bird?
Yeah, so in the real story, Nigel is the male and the concrete is the female. But since I'm the male, I decided that I'm the concrete bird, and so that's sung from her perspective, the real bird. So he's so full of anxiety that she's going to leave once now that she has discovered. Probably, I mean, I would assume any bird at some point would discover.
Wait
you
a
know,
second.
It's been 3.5 years. You haven't made eye contact with me yet. You know what's up? But that he's so full of anxiety and worry since his flaws are showing and his inabilities that she needs to reassure him. But also, it kind of surprised me writing these lyrics that there's some new kind of surprise that comes out in her song. So she says, "I love you, my silent bird, and surely I always will." But then she says, "But when my breath fails me and I sleep, remember this is true. My heart will always be here with you." So then we remember, oh, she is actually going to die at some point. And he won't. And so that's some new like wrinkle in the relationship as well. He's maybe been so worried about his own imperfections and something that he'd forgotten that moment. But she wants to reassure him that I'm here forever, and even when I'm gone, my heart will still be here. So yeah, I like to think that I was able to come up with this like beautiful window into human relationships through the story of a bird.
A lonely bird.
A lonely bird on an island.
I'm like, whoa.
It's so deep. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Do you
So
ever run this
interesting.
past your wife and she's like, this is awesome? Like, what's her background in music, or does she just enjoy listening to you?
She likes to tell people that she thought she was musical till she met me. No, she played clarinet
Okay.
and a little bit of piano through
Mhm.
high school.
Yeah.
And she likes to sing. She likes to sing hymns and
Yeah.
things. But she does actually teach music classes for little kids, like toddlers.
Oh, cool.
And I think she's actually got a really nice voice and a great ear. She's
Mhm.
actually been a very helpful critic for me. Everybody
Yeah.
needs kind of a trusted critic.
Yeah.
And she's been that for me. Sometimes I'll listen to part of my piece and just say, no. Okay,
Not
I
working.
guess. I'm so inside my composer brain and
Yeah.
busy sometimes composing music for other composers because I know they're going to hear it and say, whoa!
Yeah.
And then I'll play something for Michelle and she's like, lame. Like, okay.
Brings you right back down to earth.
Just keeps you real.
Yeah, she does.
That's awesome.
But she does like my music, and I think she likes these songs too.
Good,
She
yeah.
liked the
They're
performance.
clever.
Yeah, I like what you were saying about how you're taking a news piece and then you're making it musical. It makes it more long lasting because news is so like fleeting. Everything is just like
Yeah.
to get clicks. Everything's so like like check out what happened here, and everything's kind of like skewed. This seems just like it's like honest story about this bird. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like it's really taking an angle. I mean, I guess you're kind of shaping that and kind of emphasizing it, but it's not really. I mean, you don't have like an agenda. You're just trying to like
Oh.
talk about human experience.
Yeah, it's like just honest human experience, putting it out in song. Hoping to give like a window inside people's hearts. I hope that people can hear either of these songs and it resonates. I noticed in the concert on Saturday that during each of these songs, there were a variety of audience members in tears, which was amazing to me.
Yeah.
You can only sort of see like the glisten because it's dark. But you can
But
see
they're
eyeballs
there.
out there, and then all of a sudden this glisten right below it running down the cheek, And people have told me that too. People have said that about either of these songs. People will say like the Nigel one just moved me so much. It
Yeah.
resonated with me. And same with the Silent Bird song, not just because it's a beautiful song, but there's something so true about it,
That's so amazing. And I mean, birds, do you think anything is really going on in like the bird's mind? Like, do you think it's actually a complex being, or do you think that we can just like, we can see meaning in really whatever?
That's a really interesting and fascinating question because frequently we're told, like in school growing up, that the thing that sets humans apart from the rest of the world is our brain and our ability to think and plan and learn and everything like that. But being a casual ornithologist or an ornithology fan, I'm not an ornithologist, but a fan of ornithology. I like to read a lot of articles. It seems like there's this like new wave of like real serious scientists discovering that animals and plants actually are far more complex and far more wise than we ever thought. The way that they harmonize with the rest of nature and the way that they communicate with each other, and it's really kind of marvelous. So while I do believe that humans have certain intellectual skills that the rest of nature doesn't, I think there's way, way, way more going on inside the brains and hearts of these animals than we probably even could dream up right now. So I'd like to think that that there's some real scientific truth
Yes.
behind
Nigel.
the bird
To
songs.
Nigel.
Yeah, there's something like that in there.
It's cool.
Awesome.
Any update on the new birds on the island? I mean, how have they been treating the concrete birds? Has anybody fell in love again?
Hey, we have decoy birds here in town, actually.
Really?
Yeah, do you know about this?
No, I had no idea.
I went and visited them a few weeks ago.
Where are they?
At James Campbell Wildlife Refuge.
Oh,
you know where the
just-
shrimp trucks are?
Yeah,
if you drive down there by Kuhuku Farms and everything, there's the entrance to the James Campbell Wildlife Refuge. You can sign up for a tour for part of the year. You can sign up for a tour on Saturday morning and go see birds and other stuff they've got going on there. And we went on this special tour to go see the albatross chicks that they have out there right now.
Yeah.
And in order to lure more albatrosses to the island, along with a few of the other species of bird that they have there on this sanctuary, they've had to set up decoy birds. I checked; theirs are made of plastic.
Oh, okay.
So that we don't have actual concrete birds here, but they are painted to look exactly like real birds, and they broadcast sounds as well, songs and chatter from the birds, so that others know it's true. So yeah, it's happening right here in our neighborhood.
Wow.
So interesting.
I know.
Have anything else you want to add?
How about one more song?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, any song.
So this next song is called LiDAR Eyes. I didn't know anything about the technology called LiDAR. It's called light detection and ranging. And it's kind of like radar or echolocation in bats. You know how like bats are blind, but they can bounce little sounds they just put those sounds out and they bounce back, and they can sort of see in their mind what's there. That's how they can catch a moth out of thin air in pure blackness without, functioning eyes. And but there's this technology called LiDAR, which you can beam into the ground, and it bounces back and shows you what's beneath the surface. The Mayan archaeological team decided to use LiDAR on the 800 square mile area that they have been studying forever. So for more than 100 years, archaeologists have been digging to try to map out the ancient Mayan civilization. And after 100 years and so many people working on it, they felt like they had a pretty good sense for who the Mayans really were and how big they were and what they had and what they didn't have. And they expected that they would make other certain discoveries through LiDAR, things that they weren't able to find but suspected were there. Well, when the imaging came back from LiDAR, which they do from up in a helicopter up in the sky, they said this. So the lead explorer on the team says, it really blew our minds. So that's in a headline to the New York Times. New York Times headline said it blew
There were no
their
words
minds.
other than it blew our minds.
Yeah, so they watched as this Mayan civilization unfolded on the screen in front of them, and it was far more interconnected and sophisticated and vast and technologically savvy than they ever expected. Perhaps 3 times as many people as they had expected there were in the Mayan civilization. Giant fortresses, raised highways over big, huge swamplands, so that even during the floody seasons, those highways are there. Giant agricultural production facilities where they could feed hundreds of thousands of people and transport the goods and services, or goods and whatever, all around the highways. And so really their work was just beginning. It's just beginning now to uncover these things.
Yeah.
So it's since been buried, or what happened?
So the Mayan civilization finally folded about 1,000 years ago, and now it's buried. So some things have been uncovered, and some things stayed uncovered. Like if you see these Central American temple pictures, with big, huge stairs and everything, a lot of those are Mayan. But so much of it is buried underneath the ground.
And then the LiDAR
the LiDAR can show it. And so this one archaeologist who's been digging in this one area for a few decades on this hillside said he felt like he basically had a grip for what was under there. And the only thing he got wrong was that it wasn't a hillside at all that he'd been working on for decades. It was a 7-story pyramid.
Oh my God.
He's just cleaning it off, and he's like, these look like stairs.
No, he hadn't even reached the stone yet.
Oh
but so
my gosh.
it was a hillside, but buried deep down under there was this huge pyramid.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
crazy.
And so these articles in the New York Times and National Geographic and elsewhere show the photographs of what you see now, like a jungly hillside. And then it shows it with the LiDAR imposed on it, and there's this giant pyramid under it, and these homes and structures and tombs and fortresses.
So it goes through the dirt and the sod or whatever.
Yeah, it goes
there.
through the forest canopy, through the dirt and everything, and then bounces off like basically stone or metal.
Oh,
It will bounce back, so you can see.
That's
Like
insane.
so, in this area, there were 60,000 homes that they didn't even know about.
Wow.
And all kinds of other stuff. So then,
crazy. Yeah.
This being my song cycle about human relationships, I say, what if we could look at each other through LiDAR eyes?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Right? So we look at one another and we make assumptions after a short amount of time, and maybe we dig a little bit and say, okay, that's this person, and there's not much more to them. But if we could actually see each other through LiDAR eyes, I suspect we would all look at each other and say, there's so much more there that I never even supposed. Just incredible things that I can't see with my eyes, or I couldn't access with my form of conversation or my way of interacting with you.
Yeah.
And you sort of see how divine each other are, and how much more mysterious and amazing we are.
Wow.
So this song has a lot of lyrics. It has 2 verses. The first one actually tells the news story.
Okay.
So I tried to tell the whole story of the LiDAR and the archaeologists and everything in verse 1. And then in verse 2 is the human application of the thing. So verse 1 starts off, deep in the jungle is the opening line. And then verse 2 starts off, life is a jungle. And we talk about how life is a jungle and how we need to see each other. Now this one's the hardest one, and since piano's not my main instrument, I'll probably make a few really fun mistakes.
That's okay.
So just bear with me.
We probably won't even notice.
And trying to sing at the same time some really fast words.
It's
so
awesome.
See how it goes. But this is... Okay, so with this one, you got to picture some jungle drums. Right, that's our groove. And it's got to be in a minor key because it's this mysterious jungle. So we're in A minor. Okay, can you picture the jungle drums?
Yeah. I got
okay,
it.
good. So here we go. It goes, I'll start it off with this. Deep in the jungle, archaeologists were digging, trying to map the ancient Mayans neath the ground. They drew conclusions. Having dug 100 years, they asked, has everything there is to find been found? Sorry, this is the hard part. But now something new. When they beam LiDAR from the sky, way up high, they realized their work was only just beginning. Cause there on the screen, archaeologists dream endless wonders were hidden below. There were 60,000 homes and... okay, hold on, here we go. There were 60,000 homes and tombs raised highways across the humid lowlands. Palaces and structures of all kinds. Agriculture for the masses, millions more than they'd supposed. Explorers said it really blew our minds. When they looked at the world through LiDAR eyes, through LiDAR eyes, it shone, LiDAR eyes, but through LiDAR eyes, it came alive. Now verse 2, life is a jungle. Though we try to make connections, life gets tangled up and our hearts are torn apart. We're posting pictures, sharing stories and try to reach out, but that really doesn't show us at the heart. So let's try, this is the hard part. Okay, so here we go. So let's try something new. Let's all agree that when we see through mortal eyes, we ought to realize we're so much more than what we see. Cause deep down inside there are things that we hide. They're the deep parts of you and of me. There are heartaches, hidden disappointments, struggles that the eye can't see. Talk about struggles that the eye can't see. And broken hearts in silence who need friends. Brilliant minds, they're shy, keep hidden achievements that we failed to see. In soulful depths where we once saw dead ends. My friends, can we look at each other through LiDAR eyes? But you get to go, through LiDAR eyes, we shine. LiDAR eyes, but you get to go, through LiDAR eyes, we're divine. We're divine.
Wow.
Wow, that one's so fun.
I like how you have all the parts down. Got all your percussion.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
trying to
three
play
things.
piano and percussion and lyrics and singing all at the same
And
time
all
when I'm
the
really
things
just a
we-
trumpet player. But yeah, so that's the hardest song. But luckily, that's what you have other musicians for, is to throw this in
that's
front of them and just
amazing.
let me handle the singing and the trumpet playing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow. Like, it's just so in depth that you take these little stories. I'm just very impressed. What's your process? Do you like search for these stories? Are they just things that come across your radar, or do you have a beat in your head?
My
and you're
lidar,
like,
come across my
Your
lidar.
lidar, yeah. Is that like, what's your process?
I mean, I read the news some, not obsessively,
Yeah.
but I do some, and a lot of it is just stuff you just kind of want to skip through because it's just like the daily junk,
Yeah.
and you want to get to the part where humanity is actually really cool,
Yeah.
and that's usually further on into the news. So some people actually read real newspapers, and I like to do that as much as I can, but then sometimes online news as well, and just like you can have, if you're interested in a certain subject, you can ask for a news alert, like from Google News, you know,
Yeah.
archaeology. Anytime there's an
Yeah,
archaeological
it's amazing.
discovery,
Birds.
boom, birds,
Birds.
ornithology, whatever, you know. So I have all those
Yeah.
and more, and so I get kind of alerted to some of the more interesting stories in some of the interesting fields that are outside of, you know, regular political or world news, and I try to read in that way. Like sometimes the purpose of the news feels like it's to rile us up, you know, and get us going, you know,
Yeah.
scare us into political action or something. But I try to get in the mindset of just like feeling wonder and awe. What is the most wonderful thing that's out there right now? You know, the biggest news story, and I'll go read about that, and then just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And just allow myself some time to just say, what a marvelous thing this is.
Yeah.
You know, and then from there, if it's something that really appeals to me or strikes a chord in me, I'll print it out or make a photocopy of it
Yeah.
and put it in a notebook.
So,
So I keep a notebook of stories. I have more stories in my notebook right now that could
Yeah.
be songs.
Awesome.
And but other times, sometimes it'll come to me like right away. Like right when I read it, it's like, oh, here's this line. Like someone will say something and that comes across as really musical. So I
Interesting.
do that,
Wow.
and I keep a lyric notebook where I write lyrics, and then I have a music notebook where I actually write down all the notes and everything.
I just think it's interesting. I'm taking this class actually that we have to analyze a certain news story from at least 3 different news sources and like see how they like shift everything. And
Yeah,
it's always so interesting how it really exposes, like when you look at them side by side, like how the headlines are different, all the quotes are like selected differently, and the way that people will take the same facts to mean like drastically different things. I don't know, it's just so weird. And like you're saying, it's like it divides everybody, but like this seems like a really positive spin on the news.
These
Yeah,
are probably the stories that
refreshing.
you wouldn't expect to read all that differently from one newspaper to the next.
Yeah.
Whether it's extreme conservative or extreme liberal, they'll all probably want to say the same thing, speak in a different voice, because each newspaper kind of has its own voice that its readers are comfortable with, and certain kind of language that they're accustomed to and that they can handle. But yeah, these are the stories that are not there to divide, but rather, you know, we all kind of unite, and just like, I never thought like Mayan archaeology was cool before, and now I do. I'm like, go archaeologists! Let's uncover this thing, you know.
it's a different way to
And it
look
doesn't
at it.
matter what my political or religious persuasions are or anything like that. It's just like awesome.
I heard about this story that you might be interested in writing a song about, but it was from like 1970. Somebody showed me this video, but there was this whale that got beached in Oregon, and it was going to die, and then it did die. So they didn't want it to like infect the water or something, so they needed to like break up the whale into multiple pieces. So what they ended up doing was like loading the whale with dynamite, and they like blew up the whale like on the beach, and it's the craziest video. If you look up like Oregon whale dynamite from like 1970 is one of the most interesting like news stories I've ever seen, because you just see like a whale blow up basically, and then like chunks fly and like destroy property and stuff. There's like certain people with like their cars that just have like whale like So that's
Dude,
something you could
yeah.
look into.
Okay.
Or Sun City, Arizona, the Great Llama Chase. Need I say more?
The Great Llama Chase.
It went on for hours. These 2 llamas just escaped from the petting zoo, and nobody could catch them for like hours. It was
sounds
live.
so musical.
Yeah, so 2 llamas.
It's fast-paced, it's fun, it's frantic,
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
it was frantic. And Sun City is like an old folks like residential area, so they're in their golf carts just going about 2 miles an hour trying to find these 2 llamas.
These darn kids are like,
Yeah.
oh wait, it's just llamas.
Whales and llamas. So
They're like, am
there you
I
go.
going to dementia? It's like, oh, is that real?
Sun City, that's a good
Yeah.
good city name for a song.
Sun City.
City and a llama chase.
And a
That's all
llama
good too,
chase,
yeah.
the Great
those,
Llama
those sound
Chase.
musical just as words. The Great Llama
2015.
Chase.
Yeah, we watched it in class. It was live. I just turned it on.
Like,
Of
stop
what
learning.
year? What year?
2015, I think.
The
So-
llama chase of 2015.
See, it's already so.
They're like
It's
trotty. As like a march. Yeah.
Like like hooves on the sidewalk. Exactly. So.
Wow.
And some spitting
Awesome.
sounds.
That's exactly how llamas sound.
I'm glad we started something.
This is awesome. No. What's your advice for anybody starting in music or wanting to get into it? Or-
Well, for music, I mean, if you love music, I would go into it.
Yeah.
You gotta love it.
Mm-hmm.
Music's hard. It's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
Some people actually come to our department. Actually, a lot of people have had dozens of conversations with people who show up and want to major in music or minor in music and have never made music in their life. Actually, want to major in piano performance or something like that. And that's kind of the equivalent of like me walking up, like going to BYU Provo and saying I want to major in quarterback. So let me on the team because
Is that a major?
because I've never been quarterback, I've never played football, but
Yeah.
that's what college is for, right?
Right.
Put me on the team, coach. And so you really have to love music to get in to really get into it and get serious. If you want to actually major in music, there will
Yeah.
be a lot of classes that challenge you a lot,
Mhm.
and you might say, I don't love music enough to do this.
Yeah, like
Not
the
that
intense
much.
theory and stuff. the
Yeah, some
music
intense
history.
theory and music
Yeah.
history, all of which I actually, if I didn't already, I really grew to love it. Like medieval music, Gregorian chant,
Really?
it's like one of the most beautiful things in the whole world to me.
Really?
Yeah, and like when I was a
Interesting.
kid, it had zero appeal to me. I mean, I thought it was a
Can't
bunch
imagine
of monks
why, I
in
mean.
robes just singing stuff and banging their head with wood, like in the Monty Python movie. But yeah, I just love music enough to where I think that's just like amazing.
Yeah.
But if you're in music and you want to like create songs, I mean, a lot of it is just finding the thing that inspires you.
Mm-hmm.
Like in this case, it was news articles, but for other pieces, it's been animals. Like I wrote a suite of pieces about animals in the aquarium in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And penguins are so quirky when they walk,
Yeah.
and then they're a completely different animal when they're underwater. Underwater, they're like missiles,
Yeah. Beautiful.
And then this extremely slow-moving a leafy sea dragon, just like moves through the darkness. It has to be in darkness, and it moves about 1/1,000,000th of a mile an hour, and you can hardly believe that thing even exists. And so those things are all you'd say they're extra musical, meaning outside
Yeah.
of music, but they really ignite music in me.
Yeah.
So find something that's wonderful to you and that causes you to feel awe, and then go get creative about it. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, why do you
Awesome.
think that these are fringe topics in music, I guess? Because everything, it's like, oh, like a breakup. Like, that's like the stereotypical, like, song that happens. Or, like, pop music. It's always based around, like, either getting money or, like, love. Like, why do you feel like it's, I don't know, too exclusive? Like, I feel like you're just
About those
opening
topics?
it up. Well, yeah, I feel like you're opening it up to new things, like these birds and, like, these Mayan archaeology.
Yeah, so in the songwriting class we offer here, we look at, we do 6 or 7 different song concepts as far as like lyric concepts. And we find that, I think that the most common song is just a first-person song sung by somebody about their real feelings. And that's just the easiest to do. Like you would just say, how do you feel? Oh, I feel lonely, and I miss you, and I want to see you, and give you a hug. And so there's my song, and that was super easy.
Yeah.
And it was just sung from my perspective, but sometimes you have to step outside of yourself to write a song as if you're a different character. Like here in Nigel, I stepped sort of outside of myself and became a concrete bird. How do I feel there, and go read about archaeologists and sing about them. So they're not anything that's already by default a part of me. So I guess stepping outside of yourself and doing it is great. Sting, pop stars, rock star, actually found the same thing. Back in the 80s and 90s, he used to be a prolific songwriter and put out CD after CD of original music. And finally, in the early 2000s, he came to a point where he just stopped feeling inspired. And he just stopped writing songs, and he didn't write a single song for 10 years.
Interesting.
Done.
Just done.
Yeah.
He couldn't. He felt like he couldn't.
That's
Wow.
sweet.
There was no more inspiration. It had dried up.
It's like the romantic poets. Have you heard that? Every genius stopped at 30.
Yeah,
They
and
couldn't
you
write
look back and
anymore.
you say, what genius I had back then.
Yeah, and they couldn't do it.
But Sting then got approached by a Broadway producer who said, we want you to write a new musical. Would you do it? And he eventually said yes, he would. And it was supposed to be a musical about his hometown, this little tiny coastal town, shipping town in England, southern England. And he said it was the most liberating musical experience of his life to step outside of himself. You don't have to have the inspiration in you. You don't have to feel feelings that are worth singing about. What about I become that ship captain and I sing from inside him? Or what if I become the wife who is all alone and scared and hurting because her husband is a sailor at sea for 11 months out of the year, and she doesn't know if he'll ever come back alive. You never just see him,
Yeah.
And so he sings. So he wrote songs from their perspectives, and he said the music just came flowing, just gushing out of him, and just reawakened something inside of him, all because he was willing to step outside of himself and look at life from someone else's perspective. And then it became really easy. So I guess that would be the first answer that comes to my head about why so many songs are kind of the same, because the default easiest thing is just to say what you're feeling right now. And when you're a teenager and you're in your 20s and whatever, you feel things that other people are feeling too, and you just sing it and people say, yeah. And then later on your feelings get more complex and messy, and life gets messy and beautiful and amazing and harder to describe, and you sometimes step outside yourself and discover that really speaks to you.
Wow.
Awesome.
Hey, sorry guys, can you give us a few minutes break? Someone needs to,
We can be done, because I got to teach at 3:30.
Yeah, we can wrap this up.
We can wrap it up. Do you want us to do that, Joe?
Just 1 second.
Oh, it's okay. All right.
I got to catch a flight, so I just need to grab something.
Oh, okay.
You guys are doing great.
Are you doing okay? Are you gonna make it?
Yeah.
Okay. When people say,
Otherwise,
I gotta catch a flight, it's like, why are you here? Run.
That's a good note to end on. I feel
Yeah, I think that's great.
really brought it home. This is way better than I thought the other one was gonna go. By the way, this is way cool.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Naturally,
Right.
Yeah, I got really excited about it.
Yeah. I'm glad you emailed us late last night and changed it.
Cool.
It's awesome.
I felt kind of bad about it, but I was like, I'm
No.
going to send it anyway.
It's okay. We're good
No.
on the fly. We're
It's
good.
alright.
Yeah.
The person before this, she just canceled yesterday, just because something about her daughter and her getting sealed because she's getting married, all this stuff. It's,
There's supposed to be
crazy.
another one today?
Yeah, before.
But
So, next week.
you're the star today, so we'll just wrap it up. Are you ready, Joe?
Right.
Well, thanks for coming on and letting us hear your music and letting us pick your brain. So,
My pleasure to be here and share this music.
thanks for tuning in. This was the Xeno Podcast. You can stay updated by following our Facebook and Instagram pages at Xeno Podcast.
This podcast was brought to you by BYU Hawaii's Reading Writing Center.
You can also find us on YouTube or iTunes or by searching Xeno Podcast. That's XENO Podcast.
If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at podcastzeno@gmail.com.
Thanks for learning by listening.